Steven said, I am a contemporary abstract artist. I left the entrepreneur world in Austin, Texas, a few years ago to pursue my greatest passion, which is painting and art, and to at least try to do that, because it's not a very easy thing to do full time. So my wife and I left Austin a year ago, a place that we absolutely love, and moved up the road to Waco, Texas, where we demoed a house, bought a little bit of land, and built my new art studio on the property. And my art studio is my cathedral. And you guys will know this. Your space is your space, right? And it's where I go to be silent, to be loud, to listen, to learn, to study, and to play. And the first body of work that I started in this studio is titled, These Are My Shapes, a conversation with someone. And I came up with this idea, and it's 18 pieces, sculpture and paintings, that revolve around me standing in front of a crowd like you, sharing my life and my story. Truths and things that I value that I think I can offer as wisdom to somebody. And this crowd came and nobody's listening. Everybody's not present, which is something that's very common today. And so I begin to have this really sarcastic conversation to myself, from myself, while I'm speaking to this crowd. And that's how all of these paintings are titled. And so I brought a video with me to kind of bring you into my world, to show you how I create in my studio, how I play in my studio, and kind of how I work through myself in these conversations and these things. And then after the video, I'm gonna go a little deep and share a little bit about my life and the things that I'm wrestling with as an artist right now.
Okay, all flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro, go. Rhino, go. Guidance, go. Control, go. Telcom, go. GNC, go. Ecom, go. Surgeon, go. Capcom, we're go for landing. flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro, go, Rhino, go, guide, go, control, go, Telcom, go, GNC, go, Econ, go, Surgeon, go, Capcom, go, flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro, go, Rhino, go, guide, go, control, go, Telcom, go, GNC, go, Econ, go, Surgeon, go, Capcom, we're go for landing. Go, flight controllers, gonna go for landing. Retro, go, Rhino, go, guide, go, control, go, Telcom, go, GNC, go, Econ, go, Surgeon, go, Capcom, we're go for landing.
Okay, now you know me. Now you know my marks, you know all my layers, you know my textures, you know the depth, you know the color, you know that there's something happening inside there. And last year, I was sitting around studying because I study a lot. And I was thinking through the question that I know a lot of you have probably asked yourselves, but maybe not really thought of. And that question is, what happens when I hang my art in a gallery and I leave the room and I don't have the chance to stand here in front of you and tell my story and what is in that piece? What does that piece of art say? How does my voice speak when I leave that room? And in a way, it kind of devastated me because you can't really know. And so I started putting a ton of time into figuring out, how can I make sure that my voice speaks through my art when I leave the room? Because I feel like I have these really deep things to share about human condition, from the suffering, from the joy, from the pain, from the love. I have these things that I want to say through my art, but how do I say it when I'm not in the room? So I started thinking about these things. And that series of work, These Are My Shapes, a conversation with someone, starts with my birth year, and it works all the way to today, 43 years. And it goes through my story. That story starts in 1974, when I was brought into this world on purpose. There are no accidents. We are all here on purpose. And I was brought into this world of color and beauty and awe and joy and wonder. Then 10 years later, in 1984, as a 10-year-old boy, I was raped, and that innocence was just thrown away. It was taken from me. It was stolen from me. For the next 10 years, this destructive path of isolation and depression, sorrow and anger and rage and shame just pressed me down, and I continued to just run and hide. And 10 years after that, 1994, I wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I'm literally 3 feet above my bed, in the air. I get slammed to the mattress, and I hear this voice, this just resounding voice that says, "I love you." I fall off my bed, and I just weep on the floor. I couldn't speak, but the only things I could think was, "You're real. You're real." The following year, I wind up in Rwanda, just months after the genocide, with my father. And I'm holding these orphans, 10 years old, just like me, who have had their innocence just stolen from them. And the only difference between them and me is I can go back to my father that night and weep in his arms when their fathers and mothers were slaughtered and murdered in front of their eyes. My worldview's destroyed. I don't know what to think or what to do. These are my shapes. Fast forward 5 years later, this girl randomly tells me, who I just met, "Oh my gosh, God just told me you're gonna marry my best friend." A year later, we're married. And we're celebrating our 17th year anniversary here this weekend. And it's the second greatest love that I've ever experienced next to my Savior. These are my shapes. These are the stories that I want to tell. These are the stories that we need to tell, because we all have a voice. And what happens when we hang that work as artists and we leave the room? How much time do we spend outside of the work itself trying to figure out how we can put that story, put our shapes into our art? Right, Amy? You know what I'm talking about. Absolutely. And so I started thinking about that, and I thought, man, I feel like we live in the hidden age where everybody is hiding behind fear. Everybody is hiding behind something. Nobody wants to be transparent. Nobody wants to be vulnerable. There's this fear that exists, and there are things in play that we can hide behind. We can hide behind an icon. We can hide behind a profile photo. It's so easy today to not be vulnerable. But we as artists have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to observe the world around us, observe the beauty, observe the pain, the suffering, and the joys, and share it with the world in a different way, in a way that brings them in closer, that brings them in tighter, and allows them to see things through different colors and sounds and different words and different voices. That is our responsibility as artists, because our voices are powerful. I decided a few years ago, actually probably less than 2 years ago, to stop playing around, to be vulnerable, to be transparent with my story, because it matters, because I'm on purpose. So therefore, my story is on purpose. And sometimes that hurts, and sometimes that's not easy to share. But I know for a fact that there are people sitting in here tonight that know exactly what I'm saying. Exactly what I'm saying. These are my shapes. And so I share them. I share my process when I create. I share the things that I use to create, the people that I study. I share my story. I share the times that are really, really difficult, and I hate the painting I'm working on, and I can't get over a certain hump for my technique to do what I want it to do. I share that. I'm vulnerable. I'm transparent with my audience. And I think there's something very, very valuable in that. I think that's something that's happening tonight already, and that's gonna happen this weekend, because you're in a place where you can be transparent. Everybody understands you here. Everybody does. You have nothing to hide behind here. Just like Stephen said, just like Joel said with his words tonight. You're welcome here. There's nothing to hide behind. This is a chance for you, maybe for the first time, to step out, that person you just met or that person you've known for 50 years, and to share your story and to create something with them or create something yourself. Emile Zola once said, there are two men born inside of the artist, the poet and the craftsman. One is born a poet, and one becomes the craftsman. To become a craftsman, you have to work, discipline, study, improve, take risks. Because a craftsman becomes a professional, becomes the person who is really, really putting truth and putting themselves into their work. So I just want to leave it with you that you matter. We need truth. We need beauty in this world. We need those things to be shared with audiences of one, audiences of 100. These are my shapes. What are yours? These are my shapes. What are yours? These are my shapes. What are yours?